Hey everyone, and welcome. So today we're going to dive into a concept that's way more than just a style of art or, a list of beliefs. We're going to explore something called the Catholic imagination, which is really a whole different way of seeing the world itself.
So, have you ever noticed this? You walk into one church and it's just packed with statues, incense, stained glass, the whole deal. Then you walk into another and it's all about simplicity, maybe with just a simple cross and a pulpit. Well, that difference isn't just about decoration. It actually points to a much, much deeper split in how different traditions imagine God's relationship with the world.
So to get to the bottom of this, we've got to start with our first big idea, this concept of an enchanted world.
At its heart, it's a really simple but powerful idea. You actually expect to find God in ordinary, everyday things. This was a big idea for the sociologist Andrew Greeley. He described the Catholic sensibility as being fundamentally enchanted. It's a worldview where the sacred isn't just locked away in heaven or, trapped in a book. It's expected to pop up right in the middle of our messy, beautiful, ordinary lives.
And just to be clear, this isn't just some nice poetry. It's a full-on theological claim. It's the idea that God actively uses tangible stuff, people, places, rituals, the world itself, to communicate grace and holiness.
Okay, so what's the theological engine that's really driving this enchanted view? For that, we're going to turn to a theologian named David Tracy, who frames this whole thing as one side of a huge historical conversation.
See, David Tracy suggested that you can understand a lot of the difference between Catholic and Protestant vibes by looking at two competing imaginations. And honestly, it's a super powerful way to see why those churches we talked about at the beginning look and feel so different. And this slide just lays out the core distinction perfectly. On the left, you've got the analogical imagination, which is really common in Catholicism. It looks for similarities, for connections. It sees the world as a kind of theater of grace, where created things are like analogies pointing back to God. But on the right, you have the dialectical imagination, which is more common in some Protestant traditions. This one emphasizes the vast difference between God and creation. It's a lot more cautious, worried that if you rely too much on physical things to find God, you could slip into idolatry. And this analogical view, it's not a new thing at all. It has incredibly deep roots in core Catholic beliefs. I mean, think about it. The Incarnation, the whole idea of God becoming a physical human being, that sets the entire pattern. Sacraments use material things like water and bread to convey grace, and the devotion to saints sees holiness as something real embodied in this huge community of people. So art and ritual aren't just decorations, they're seen as actual vehicles of faith. But why does talking about an enchanted world feel kind of strange or even urgent today? Well, this brings us to our modern world and the whole idea of disenchantment.
So the sociologist Max Weber came up with this term, disenchantment. And he argued that modernity didn't just make people less religious, it fundamentally changed how we feel about the world itself. Mystery kind of receded and the world started to feel less like a magical, spiritually alive place and more like a machine that we can just understand and control with science. Now, building on that, the philosopher Charles Taylor made this absolutely crucial point. He said the change isn't just out there in the world, it's in here, inside our own sense of what it even means to be a person. So Taylor contrasts what he calls the pre-modern porous self with the modern buffered self. The porous self felt totally open to the world. Spirits, demons, blessings, curses, they were all real forces that could get inside you from the outside. The modern buffered self, which is probably most of us, feels self-contained. Our thoughts and feelings are in our heads, and meaning is something we create internally, all while being sort of protected or buffered from those spiritual forces out there. And here is the key takeaway. The Catholic imagination, with all its sacraments, its relics, and its shrines, it acts like a kind of cultural toolkit. It gives people practices that help them maintain a sense of openness, a porousness to the sacred, even when they're living in a modern world that assumes we're all buffered and closed off.
So we've got these big ideas, enchanted versus disenchanted worlds, analogical versus dialectical views. But what does this actually look like on the ground? How does it really shape the way people live and worship?
This table just makes it so clear. The Catholic tendency is to mark space as sacred with stuff like altars and relics. Time gets thickened by this really dense calendar of feast days and saints' days, and art is a tool for teaching and for devotion. In contrast, many Protestant traditions tend to treat space more functionally, as a gathering place. Time is organized around scripture and preaching. And art is often viewed with a bit of suspicion, wary of it becoming an idol.
Now, to be really clear, this isn't about being anti-art or anti-mystery. The Protestant tendency just operates on a totally different economy of signs. The core conviction is the primacy of the Word, the idea that God's clearest communication to us is through Scripture. So other mediators, like statues or relics, are dialed way back to keep that focus crystal clear. The question you hear a lot is there a clear warrant for this in the Bible?
So, as you can imagine, neither of these ways of seeing the world is perfect. Each one has certain strengths, and each one is vulnerable to certain dangers. Let's take a quick look at that balance. The virtue of that analogical Catholic view is its amazing ability to find holiness and beauty literally everywhere. But the danger? It can sometimes slip into superstition. On the other side, the dialectical view is fantastic at keeping the focus on the Bible and critiquing idolatry, but it can sometimes risk feeling a little disconnected from that sacramental, symbolic richness.
And of course, today things aren't nearly so black and white. We're all living in this shared secular age. You see tons of Protestants who are rediscovering the beauty of liturgy and art, and at the same time, lots of Catholics have adopted this deep, personal engagement with Scripture that was historically more of a Protestant strength. The conversation is definitely alive and well.
But in the end, it all comes back to this simple, powerful idea. This is the heart of that enchanted worldview we started with. It's a way of looking at your daily life and scanning the horizon, not just for chores and challenges, but for moments of grace, for the fingerprint of the divine in the most ordinary places. So we want to leave you with this question to think about. In our modern world, which basically encourages us to be self-contained, rational, and buffered, what's the value of cultivating a disciplined enchantment? What do we gain or what do we lose when we choose to see the world as being charged with meaning? Thanks for joining us.